Imagine for a second you're looking at the political map of an Indian state. You see the governor sitting in the Raj Bhavan, all pomp and protocol. And then just down the road, you've got the chief minister and their team.
Right, in the secretariat, deep in the chaos of democracy.
Exactly. So who actually runs the show? Is it the person with the fancy seal, or is it the people who are, supposedly just advising them?
Well, that's the classic constitutional question, isn't it? The shadow versus the substance.
Is it the governor or the council of ministers?
Constitutionally, the governor is the head of the state. That's the ceremonial figurehead. But the council of ministers, led by the CM, they are the head of the government. They've got their hands on the wheel.
But here's the real tension, and this is what we're going to dig into today.
Mm.
Unlike at the center with the president, the Constitution gives the governor a sort of discretionary loophole.
An escape hatch.
Yeah, an escape hatch that the president just doesn't have. And that one little difference, it changes the entire power dynamic.
It does more than that. It can turn what seems like a simple advisory role into, well, a constitutional minefield. That tension between Article 163 for the states and Article 74 for the center is where the real game is played.
Welcome, everyone. You are listening to a very special deep dive, presented by Simplified UPSC by PPP.
Hey, it's great to be here to break this all down.
Now, before we get into the heavy lifting of constitutional law, and trust me, we are going deep today, I have a small but really important request for you. If you're finding value in these deep dives, if they're helping you connect the dots between the textbook and the exam hall, we'd humbly ask you to subscribe to the Simplified UPSC by PPP YouTube channel.
And if you're in a position to, please do consider joining the paid membership on YouTube. It's really the engine that keeps this whole thing running.
It is. It lets us do the research and bring you this level of detail without cutting any corners.
Absolutely.
And a massive, massive shout out to all our existing members. You are the reason we can do this. You're the backbone of this entire project.
We can't thank you enough.
And for everyone listening, please hit that like button and leave your valuable comments. We do read them, and they really help us shape the show.
And don't forget the resources we've put together for you. We don't want you just listening.
Right. We want you revising. Free notes, and that includes practice PYQs, are available right now on our Telegram channel.
And for our Legend YouTube members, we have premium content waiting for you on the Discord channel.
We're talking premium notes, extra PYQs, and this is the big one model mains answers.
That is absolute gold for your preparation, so do join us there.
Okay, today's vision is crystal clear. We are doing a complete breakdown of Chapter 32, State Council of Ministers, from the absolute Bible for aspirants, Indian Polity by M. Laxmikanth, the 8th edition.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're shifting our focus from the center down to the states. And the first thing that jumps out from Chapter 32 is just how similar the structure looks.
It's almost a mirror image, The Constitution sets up a parliamentary system in the states that is very closely modeled on the union pattern. So the machinery feels very familiar.
So we have that dual executive structure again.
We do. You have the nominal executive, which is the governor, the de jure head.
And then the real executive.
Right,
Yeah.
the de facto authority. That's the Council of Ministers, headed by the chief minister.
So in simple terms, the governor reigns, but the chief minister rules.
Precisely. The governor is the head of the state, but the real political and administrative power sits with the council.
But, and this is the crucial but, that ruling part isn't quite as absolute for a chief minister as it is for the prime minister, is it?
Not at all. And that brings us right to the heart of the controversy, Article 163.
It sounds so simple when you first read it. There shall be a council of ministers to aid and advise the governor. Simple, but there's a huge catch.
A massive catch. The text says they aid and advise the governor except insofar as he is required to exercise his functions in his discretion.
That one word, discretion, that's the landmine, isn't it?
It is. In regular English, it just means I'll do what I think is best. But in constitutional law, it's a loaded gun.
And you really see how loaded it is when you compare it to the president's situation.
Exactly. Look at Article 74. The 42nd and 44th Amendments made the Union Cabinet's advice binding on the president. It ties his hands.
But for the governor?
For the governor, that binding language just isn't there in the same way. The Constitution itself imagines situations where the governor can act without or even, against the advice of the council.
So who gets to decide what falls under discretion? If a governor says, I think this bill requires my personal discretion, and the CM says, no, it doesn't, you have to listen to us, who settles that?
Logically, you'd think a court would. But Article 163, Clause 2, is very blunt. It just drops the hammer.
What does it say?
It says if any question arises on whether a matter falls within the governor's discretion or not, the decision of the governor in his discretion shall be final.
Final. As in, that's it. You can't challenge it.
You cannot drag them to court over the validity of that choice. The Constitution says the validity of anything done by the governor cannot be called into question on the ground that he ought or ought not to have acted in his discretion.
Wow. That seems like a terrifying amount of power for an unelected official. Can a governor just wake up one day and decide to run the state by himself?
Well, not quite. This is where the judiciary steps in to provide some balance. We have to look at the landmark Shamshir Singh case from 1974.
I've heard of this one. It's the case that defined the satisfaction of the executive, right?
Exactly. The Supreme Court said that generally the governor must act on aid and advice. The logic is that in a parliamentary democracy, the satisfaction of the head of state isn't about their personal feelings.
It's not about whether they're happy with the decision.
No. When the Constitution says the governor must be satisfied, it means the constitutional satisfaction of the Council of Ministers.
So, Shamshir Singh basically confirmed that outside of those specific discretionary areas, like reserving a bill for the president or recommending president's rule, the governor is a constitutional head, not a dictator.
Correct. The satisfaction is really the satisfaction of the elected team.
Okay, there's another layer here. What about the advice itself? Let's say the council advises the governor to pass some really controversial order. Can a court ask to see that advice?
No, absolutely not. The nature of advice given by ministers to the governor cannot be inquired into by any court.
Why is this so secret?
It's to ensure intimate and confidential communication. The cabinet has to be able to discuss all options freely, even bad ones, without the fear that their internal debates will be picked apart in a courtroom.
So if ministers thought their advice could become public record in a court case, they might hold back.
They might stop giving honest advice. It would chill the whole process. So the advice is black docs. The court only looks at the final order, not what led to it.
Got it. Okay, so that's the constitutional framework. Now let's talk about building the team. How does this whole council get formed?
It all starts with the captain. The chief minister is appointed by the governor.
Simple enough. And the rest of the players.
The other ministers are also appointed by the governor, but, and this is the key, only on the advice of the chief minister.
So the governor can't just pick his favorite local businessman and make him the finance minister.
Definitely not. The governor essentially must appoint whoever the CM recommends. It's about preserving the CM's authority over their own team.
Right. If the governor could pick ministers, the CM couldn't be held responsible for the government's performance.
Exactly.
Now, I want to pause on this because we usually assume the CM has total freedom to pick their team. But Laxmikanth points out a really interesting exception where the Constitution basically forces a specific portfolio on the CM.
Ah, you're talking about the tribal welfare minister provision.
I am. It seems a bit odd, doesn't it? Telling an elected leader, you must have this specific person in your cabinet.
It is a constraint, no doubt, but you have to see it through the lens of historical responsibility and, protective discrimination.
What do you mean?
The framers of the Constitution knew that in states with very large tribal populations, the political machinery might just ignore their welfare if left to its own devices. So Article 164 is a constitutional guarantee.
Okay, so which states are we talking about here?
Originally, it was Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha. But then demographics changed, and we had the 94th Amendment Act in 2006.
And that changed the list.
It did. It removed Bihar from the list.
Why Bihar?
Because after the state was bifurcated to create Jharkhand, Bihar didn't really have any major scheduled areas left. But the amendment added the newly formed states of Chhattisgarh and Jharkhand.
So the current list is Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and Odisha.
CJMO. In those 4 states, there must be a minister in charge of tribal welfare.
And is that all the minister does? Just tribal welfare?
No, interestingly, the Constitution says that minister can also be in charge of the welfare of scheduled castes and backward classes or any other work. But the tribal welfare part is the mandatory core of their job.
That's a classic prelims factoids. Now let's talk numbers. I remember back in the day, you'd hear about these jumbo cabinets.
Oh, yes.
A coalition government would come in, and to keep everyone happy, the CM would hand out minister posts like they were candy.
It was a real problem, a huge drain on the state's money, and it made a mockery of governance. Ministries were created for the most ridiculous things just to give someone a title and a car.
So Parliament stepped in.
They did, with the 91st Amendment Act of 2003. This is the Size Matters Amendment.
So what's the rule?
It placed a hard ceiling. The total number of ministers, including the chief minister, cannot exceed 15% of the total strength of the Legislative Assembly.
15%. So for a state like Uttar Pradesh with 403 seats, that's a max of, what, 60 ministers?
Around that, yes. But there's also a floor, a minimum limit.
Why minimum?
Well, think about a small state like Goa or Sikkim. A 40-seat assembly. 15% of that is only 6. You can't run a government with just 6 people.
Right. So what's the floor?
The number of ministers, including the CM, cannot be less than 12.
Why 12? Is that just an arbitrary number?
It's seen as the minimum viable number to handle all the essential portfolios. Home, finance, health, education, and so on. You need a functional cabinet.
That makes sense. Okay, what about the people themselves? Do you have to be an elected MLA to become a minister?
Generally, yes. The executive is drawn from the legislature. But there's an exception, to bring in outside talent or for a leader to take charge before they've won a seat.
So an outsider can be a minister?
Yes, but there's a ticking clock.
A little long.
6 consecutive months. If they don't get elected to the state legislature, either the assembly or the council, within those 6 months, they cease to be a minister.
Let's clarify a common doubt. Can they just resign for a day after 6 months and get reappointed for another 6?
Absolutely not. The Supreme Court has shut that door firmly. They called it a fraud on the Constitution. It's a one-time window to get your electoral legitimacy. If you fail, you're out.
Okay, so once the team is picked, they have to be sworn in. Let's cover the oath, salary, and tenure.
Right. The governor administers the oaths of office and of secrecy.
And their tenure. The book says ministers hold office during the pleasure of the governor. Now, we just established the governor is a nominal head. Does this mean he can fire a minister just because he doesn't like them?
We have to unpack that phrase, during pleasure. It's one of those old British constitutional terms that sounds polite, but implies immense power.
So what does it really mean?
In this context, the pleasure of the governor is effectively the pleasure of the chief minister.
Explain how that works. Because on paper, it's the governor's signature on the dismissal order.
It is. But the governor appoints on the advice of the CM and dismisses on the advice of the CM. If a minister disagrees with cabinet policy or is involved in a scandal, the CM can ask them to resign. If they refuse,
The CM just tells the governor to fire them.
and the governor acts on that advice, he generally cannot dismiss a minister on his own if the government still has a majority and the CM supports that minister.
So tenure really depends on staying in the CM's good books.
Precisely.
And who decides their paycheck while they're doing that?
The state legislature, they determine the salaries and allowances for all the ministers.
Okay, this brings us to what's probably the most important concept for the mains exam. Responsibility.
Absolutely. The bedrock principle. Article 164 says the Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the Legislative Assembly.
The famous phrase, swim and sink together.
That's the one. It means all ministers share joint responsibility for everything the government does or doesn't do. They are a team.
So if the assembly passes a no-confidence motion, the whole government is out.
Everyone resigns. And here's a detail that often trips people up. Even if a minister is a member of the Legislative Council, the upper house, they still have to resign if the lower house passes a no-confidence motion.
That's a key point. Responsibility is to the assembly, the house of the people.
Correct. And this also implies what's called cabinet solidarity.
Meaning?
A minister might argue fiercely against a policy in the privacy of a cabinet meeting. But once the decision is made, they must defend it in public and in the legislature.
They can't go to the media and say, well, I thought this was a terrible idea, but the CM insisted.
No, that would be a breach of collective responsibility. If they feel that strongly, their only option is to resign.
What about individual responsibility?
Well, that links back to the pleasure of the governor, which we know means the pleasure of the CM. A minister can be removed by the CM even if the council as a whole enjoys the confidence of the House.
So the team might be winning, but a specific player can still be dropped.
Exactly. It gives the CM the power to maintain discipline.
Now, let's talk about legal responsibility. This is where we differ from the UK, right? In the UK, the saying is, the king can do no wrong.
Right, which implies that someone else, a minister, has to take the legal blame. In the UK, every royal order needs a minister's countersignature. That signature makes them legally liable.
But we don't do that in India. Why not?
Well, it ties back to the secrecy of aid and advice we discussed earlier. If the courts are explicitly forbidden from asking what advice was given, how can they hold a minister legally liable for that advice?
That's a great point. You can't sue someone for advice you aren't allowed to see.
Precisely. So in India, we don't have legal responsibility for ministers in that sense. We have political responsibility. The minister answers to the legislature and the people, not to a court for their advice.
A very significant difference. Okay, moving on. Let's clear up some terminology. We often use Council of Ministers and Cabinet as if they're the same thing.
But for an aspirant, they are very different.
So what's the difference?
The Council of Ministers is the whole group. It includes everyone. It's the entire team roster.
And
the Cabinet is the much smaller core group within the Council. It consists only of the senior-most ministers, the cabinet ministers. It's the nucleus.
The heavy hitters. The ones with the big portfolios like home, finance, health.
Exactly. They are the real policy-making body.
So let's break down the hierarchy in the council.
Tier 1 is the cabinet ministers. They head the important departments. They attend all cabinet meetings. They make the big decisions. That's the ministers of state. Now, these can be of two types. They might be given independent charge of a smaller department, or they could be attached to a cabinet minister to help them.
Do they attend cabinet meetings?
Only if they're specially invited, usually when something concerning their department is being discussed. They are not members of the cabinet.
And Tier 3?
Deputy ministers. They are never given independent charge. Their job is to assist the cabinet ministers with their administrative and political duties. They're there to help manage the workload.
I often see the term deputy chief minister in the news. Where does that fit in constitutionally?
It doesn't. That's the trick. The Constitution makes zero mention of a deputy chief minister. It's a purely political post.
So it's just a fancy title.
It's used to balance equations in a coalition or to appease a powerful faction leader. They get the rank and perks of a cabinet minister, but constitutionally, they're just another minister. It gives them no special power over the CM.
And why is the cabinet called the nucleus?
Because it's the highest decision-making authority. It formulates all major government policies. It's the chief crisis manager. It deals with all major legislative and financial matters. It is the brain of the state government.
So the council is the body, but the cabinet is the brain.
That's a great way to put it. And the cabinet's decisions are binding on the entire Council of Ministers.
Right. Okay, so we've got the theory. What does this all actually mean for the exam? Let's connect this to some previous year questions. This is the simplified UPSC value add part.
This is crucial. Theory without application is useless. You have to see how they test these concepts.
Let's start with linkage 1, the Delhi exception. We talked about the 15% limit on the size of the ministry in states, but I'm looking at a 2016 mains question about the 69th Amendment and the conflicts in Delhi.
Yes. This is classic trap. Students memorize 15% and think it applies everywhere.
But not in Delhi.
No. For the National Capital Territory of Delhi, under Article 239AA, the strength of the Council of Ministers is fixed at 10% of the Assembly's strength.
Delhi has 70 seats in its assembly.
Which means a maximum of 7 ministers, 1 CM, and 6 others. That's a very small team compared to a full state.
And the appointment process is different too, isn't it? This gets to the heart of the state versus union territory debate.
It does. In a state, the governor appoints the CM. In Delhi, the president appoints the chief minister, and the other ministers are also appointed by the president on the CM's advice. The lieutenant governor only administers the oath.
That directly explains the friction mentioned in that 2016 question. The lines of authority are just drawn differently.
Absolutely. The aid and advise relationship in Delhi has more friction points because the LG has more discretion than a state governor, especially over police, public order, and land.
Okay, linkage 2, coalition politics. There's a 2025 mains question that talks about the Representation of the People Act, corrupt practices, and undue influence. How does our chapter on the Council of Ministers connect to that?
It connects through that 91st Amendment again. One of the main reasons for capping the ministry size was to stop what was called defection rewards.
You mean bribing MLAs with minister posts to get them to switch parties?
Exactly. It's a form of political corruption. The 91st Amendment didn't just cap the size, it also added a disqualification clause.
Which says?
It says that if a member is disqualified on the grounds of defection, they are also disqualified from being appointed as a minister.
So you can't just defect and immediately get rewarded with a ministry?
No. You have to go back and get reelected first. This directly tackles the unprincipled politics mentioned in that question. It's an attempt to clean up the executive.
Linkage 3, federalism. We see questions on federalism every single year. The state council doesn't work in a vacuum.
Not at all. The text mentions the interstate council and the zonal councils. These are vital forums for cooperative federalism.
And how does the CM fit into those?
The chief minister acts as the vice chairman of their zonal council by rotation, holding the post for a year at a time. The Union Home Minister is the chairman.
So when you're writing a mains answer about center-state relations, you should mention the zonal councils.
You absolutely should. It shows you understand the administrative machinery of federalism, not just the legislative list.
Final one, linkage 4, financial relations. There's a 2025 question about center-state financial relations.
The State Council of Ministers handles the state budget, of course.
Yeah.
But their financial autonomy is not absolute. We have to talk about a financial emergency under Article 360.
Right. What happens then? Does the state cabinet lose control?
Significantly. If a financial emergency is declared, the center can issue directions to the state on how to manage its finances.
Can they actually cut salaries?
Yes. The president can direct the reduction of salaries and allowances of everyone serving in the state, and that includes high court judges. The Council of Ministers essentially loses its financial sovereignty during that period.
That really highlights the unitary bias in our federal structure.
It does,
Look.
which is probably why it has never, ever been used so far. It's the nuclear option of finance.
So that was a whirlwind tour. We've covered the governor's discretionary power, the 15% rule, the specific tribal welfare states, and the whole swim and sink concept.
And we clarified that pleasure of the governor is really a constitutional fiction for the pleasure of the chief minister.
And we noted the lack of legal responsibility, which is a key difference with the UK system.
Which brings us to our final provocative thought.
Something to leave you with to chew on.
We obsess over the chief minister. They are the face of the state. But the Constitution places the pleasure of their tenure in the hands of the governor and the responsibility for their survival in the hands of the assembly.
A very delicate balance.
It is. And so here's the question. If the governor's satisfaction is supposed to be the council's satisfaction, as per the Shamshir Singh case, but the governor also has this personal discretion under Article 163 that explicitly cannot be questioned in court.
Where does one end and the other begin?
Exactly. Where does the line stop? In an era of fractured mandates and coalition governments, does Article 163 turn the appointed governor into the real kingmaker?
Wow.
If their decision on who to invite to form a government or when to call for a floor test falls under that unquestionable discretion, then suddenly the nominal head starts to look very, very real.
Does the safety valve of discretion actually become the steering wheel in a crisis? A powerful thought to mull over.
It forces us to ask just how robust our federal structure really is.
And that's it for this deep dive on Chapter 32. We really hope this cleared up the fog around the State Council of Ministers for you.
It was a pleasure walking through it.
Please, if you found value in this, we humbly ask you again to subscribe to Simplified UPSC by PPP on YouTube. It's a small click for you, but it means the world to us.
And if you can, please join the paid membership to support us. It truly keeps this content coming. A huge thanks again to our Legend members and all our supporters.
Don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. Let us know what topic you want us to dive into next.
And remember those resources. Free notes and practice PYQs are on Telegram. And for our Legend members, the premium notes and model mains answers are waiting for you on Discord.
Go grab those notes, keep studying, and keep questioning. Goodbye.
Happy learning.